Guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as I trek through the worlds of the internet with my brother, my compatriot from the city of Kitchener, Ontario, Canada.
We've got Alex, the producer.
That's right. Yay! We're back. We're actually back with an actual show this week because the news was, well, we got something depressing and then something, well, kind of depressing for me. Well, it kind of all sucks, but we'll have a good conversation about it.
News kind of a weird thing. For every awesome story, it's kind of almost always about 90% negative because otherwise it wouldn't be newsworthy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of it's just been one of those things. So it has been a little bit of a week here in the royal city of Guelph, Ontario for me. The weather's been more or less pretty good. So I've been out and about doing my own thing. I've been kind of doing the community activism bit, which has been mentally very exhausting, but very, very, very good, though. Just getting out there, talking with people. I've done a couple of unexpected podcast appearances on Guelph's local podcast, Breezy Breakfast, talking a little bit about accessibility, doing some Indigenous issues, stuff like that. I've just recently volunteered at an arts festival, which was really fun. I had to miss the one day because I got sick literally as I was getting into the cab. But that turned out pretty well, though, for that weekend. And then recently, I've been just kind of doing my own thing. I've been still playing with my longtime Dungeons and Dragons group, which is a lot of fun. This weekend, I'm really looking forward to because Guelph Royals baseball is back. So the home opener is on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to going with Blair and just kind of hanging out there, just it's kind of fun. I was driving home last night because I was buying some Pokemon stuffies and I forgot because I was like, oh crap, I gotta go pick these up. So I drove across town and the route home took me by the baseball and I just saw these kids out there just kind of playing baseball and playing catch and whatnot. And I remembered how much fun I used to have playing baseball as a child. I had my next door neighbors, and when I could convince them to go over to the ball diamond, we would just have literally a friggin' blast. I mean, I couldn't throw for shit, but I could hit. And obviously, fat kid running is tragic and sad, but I would still have fun kind of doing that. So I'm kind of looking forward to getting back into that baseball state of mind. Again, we had a fairly fun season last year. And as my sister would say, my sister Kara would be like, okay, we're going to go get girthy wieners at the ballpark. Because there's something about baseball hot dogs that are better just on equal to street meat, which if you're familiar with Toronto, they always sell the best hot dogs outside of Skydome or the Rogers Center or whatever the hell they're calling it this year. So looking forward to that. And then I guess we almost always talk about what we've been playing recently. I've been replaying a lot of Fallout 4. Again, that's sort of been my comfort game. I've modded the hell out of it. And I've been redoing settlement building because I like to play dress up, but all my settlements are please come to Fort Knox and please die because I surround them with heavy laser turrets. So if a bot fly just happens to float by, it's going to get dealt about 10,000 damage before it flaps its wings. So that's fun. And just hearing all my alarms go off as everything freaks out and blows up. I've killed more than a few settlers with missile turrets. So please don't walk into the firing range. But that's been a lot of fun. That's been very good for my mental health this past week. And I'm just kind of waiting for the next gaming thing to drop or when my free time is truly free and clear. Looking at you, end of June, I can finish Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I can finally power through Persona 4 Golden, and I can probably get through my playthrough of Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster on PlayStation 5. So that's what I've been up to. Alex, what about you, homie?
Well, speaking of, I went back to my Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster and finally got the Platinum in it. So now I have a Platinum in all 6 of the original games. Which is good, because, my God, a year ago I left it because I got frustrated, and I went, wait a minute. Maybe I don't have to do a complete second playthrough. And it turns out I had to at least play through half of the game again, but a year in between made it so that I wasn't, as, I guess, frustrated with having to start over again. And I only had to do that because there were some missable enemies for the area. And if you didn't encounter them at least once, they like you have to encounter them once for them to show up in the Veld. If you miss them, to like how it works is encounter them and it shows up in the bestiary as a grayed out thing with the name. Kill them, and then it fills out the bestiary. Well, if you missed killing something by running or whatever, if you found them in the Veld, then you could go any time of the game, even at the end game, and fight enemies from the beginning of the game. But if you never encountered them, if they had a low encounter rate, they wouldn't show up. So I was like, damn it, and I had to go back and do that. So, but doing that, I was like, you know what? I could have left it, but it's like every other game I completed 100%, and I'm like, I don't want to leave like 2 or 3 trophies. So I went and did that. I played a few things for review. I do plan. I wanted to start last week, but I've noticed something, and this might be a topic for another time on a prototype. But that Yuden Chronicle 100 Heroes came out, which is the spiritual successor from the same people that made the Suikoden series, the RPG series.
Mm-hmm.
It came out, and there's a Game Pass version, basically for free on PC or Xbox. And I was like, I was so pumped for this game. I had requested a review copy for PlayStation, and we never got it. But I was like, no big deal because it's coming out. I'll play it then. I've noticed this is now like the 4th or 5th game that I've been like super psyched for that came out on Game Pass that I just can't be bothered to play when it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like the topic discussion for another time? Is Game Pass ruining the feeling of wanting to play a game at launch? Because when you buy a game physically or even digitally, when you buy a game, there's an incentive to actually play it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're just adding it to your library, there's no real incentive to play a game unless you're worried about spoilers. So that's something for another time. But I do plan on playing that. Beyond that, this past weekend was Mother's Day, and I took my mom to go see The Fall Guy. She enjoyed it, and it was fine. A very weak first act, okay second act, good third act. Movie was a half hour too long. Was a little corny in spots, but really picked up at the end. There's my small review of that movie.
I was thinking about going to see Star Wars because I forgot it's the 25th anniversary of Phantom Menace, so not the best movie to come out, but I thought about doing that. But I am going to Transformers this week because it's like the 40th anniversary of that.
But it's the More Than Meets the Eye episodes and then a table read, and I'm like, that's not worth $16 for me.
Yeah, I might go with my buddy Liam. We might go to see that together. But if not, me and Liam are talking about doing another TWIG commentary, maybe before the end of the month. We might do the Transformers 1986 movie because I don't think we've ever done that here on the show. Definitely not with a modern crew. And now that I'm more into the weeds of that fandom other than Ooh Shiny Toy, I think I might have some interesting insights because a lot of stuff has come out in the last couple of years. Here's like a deleted storyboard. There's an artist who did some of the scenes that were cut, but the storyboards were done, so he's animated them and they look really cool.
Original teaser trailer with the silver Autobot City and stuff.
Yeah, and it had the actual Diaclone colors for Ultra Magnus and people like that. Yeah, like it was really weird to see that stuff.
If you remember, I think 2017 or maybe 2018, you and I discussed doing a commentary for Transformers, but not watching it. The goal was, because we've seen that movie so many times as a kid, like literally in my case, from the ages of like 4.5 to like 7, I watched it every single day after school. So like 200 or 300 times on my beta cassette alone. The discussion that you and I had was, do you think, because we know the exact timing and we know the dialogue of the movie, could we recite every line of the movie synced up to the movie itself and do like our own dub of it? Like, could we do a dub not just from memory, but from memory of the timing of when the people speak? And I think we discussed that we could, but we were scared by our own power.
I think I vaguely remember that conversation. I know there's certain movies I could almost do a line reading. I know when me and Liam were doing the TWIG commentary for Aliens for its 35th or 40th anniversary. By the way, go check that out in the archives because that just came out recently. Me and me and Liam were looking at each other and we know what's coming. We know exactly how to resort, stuff like that. And there was even a conversation on Twitter this past week where my friends, the game chasers, were talking about sometimes you just got to punch an alien in the face. And obviously, I brought up the xenomorph thing. Like, you want to punch that in the face? And then somebody had posted a GIF of Frost and Hicks where he pulls out the shotgun. And he's like, I like to keep this handy for close encounters. And I countered with, what are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language? And then someone posted Newt with the helmet. I'm like, why don't you put her in charge? And it's amazing how much of
You
those
should
movies you just know.
you should do a commentary with your wife Blair on the Chipmunk
Boy,
Adventure movie.
you know what? That might be kind of fun at
It,
like some point to do
just,
something like
just
that.
just be glad that we weren't recording when I watched it for the very first time, and Blair was like, "This is my favorite movie of all time," and then we sat down and watched it, and I didn't even realize she was getting upset with me because I didn't know I was ripping it to shreds as we were watching it, because with the what the F hands and comments about how inappropriate the movie is, and she's like, "It's not inappropriate," and then you and I looked at each other disgusted, and she goes, "You're ruining my childhood."
Because
or
that's what we do here.
or if you want to suffer, if the fans want us to suffer, you and I need to watch Connie and Carla and do a commentary.
Actually, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Okay, so Dave Denoyer, the guy who frequently joins me on Loose Cannon, recently we talked about the Critters franchise. That episode's come out, right? Pretty sure it has.
If it
Anyway,
hasn't, it's because I've completely forgotten. And whoops.
okay, well,
if
we'll
if it
deal with that
if it
later.
if it's not out because my brain is a blur, then it shall be.
Okay, so Dave and Enrique do this show called Do You Even Movie, and they accept listener emails. And recently, in their Beekeeper episode, I sent them a couple of suggestions for movies to cover. I sent them Dungeons and Dragons from 2001, Hackers from 1995, Judge Dredd from 1995, something else, and I
Um,
mentioned Connie and Carla.
Make them do some Canadian movies. Make them do like Cube or something, or
I
Screamers.
I would love to see them do that. Actually, that's a really good idea. I'm going to write them afterwards. But yeah, like I would really like to hear their take because Enrique has a very big knowledge of like filmmaking. Dave is like this Google of movie knowledge. Plus, he like watches every special feature and like memorizes it. But I
Yep.
hope they do Connie and Carla because I watched that movie a couple years ago. It's fine. It's definitely hits different in this political climate, but it was kind of fine. And David Duchovny's in it, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so it would be kind of fun. I hope they do the Dungeons and Dragons movie with Jeremy Irons. That would be fun. Hackers. I hang out in a Facebook group online, and you would be surprised some of the really cool things people have got from that movie. I know one of the guys in there, Renoli Santiago, the guy that played the Phantom Freak, is active in there and stuff like that. And that was kind of fun. So yeah, we got a very big show for you guys this week. Like I said, we've got some news. We're going to talk about one of the biggest deaths in the entertainment industry that has happened in quite some time. We've got a review from our friends over at Paizo. And what do we got from you, Alex, this week?
Good question. I have to remember because I recorded a bunch of stuff at once. 1 second, please. I believe I don't want to quote myself and say something that's wrong and then be like, have somebody write to me afterwards going, you don't even know what you're doing and you're the person that records and edits the show together. And it's like, damn it. Yes, I
That's
do know.
okay.
I do know.
Yeah.
The problem is we have actually a fair bit. I have, oh yes, that's right. I have a new television release of new television release of a very old show from Film Chest, as
Ooh.
well as a review that's a couple weeks in the works because I had to make sure I watched everything. A company called Film Masters. I covered one of their films in the past. They've only had a few releases so far, but they're quickly becoming one of the better boutique companies. They sent over a copy of a movie called Tormented. It's a movie from 1960, horror film, low budget, independent. Uh, if you probably haven't heard of it, but if you have, if it's tingling around in your head, it's because it was featured on MST3K in 1990. And interestingly enough, it's a fully remastered, from original film negatives. There's extra features, behind the scenes sort of stuff on the creation of it, the director. There's also like other little snippets of things about people in the movie, but they also included which I was surprised at, a full 1080p copy of the MST3K version on the disc.
Ooh, that's very cool. Actually, I thoroughly
So
enjoyed that.
I watched I had never seen the movie before, watched the full version for my review, and then ended up for a second viewing watching the MST3K version. So I thought that was kind of neat. So those are my reviews for this week.
Very cool. All right, so we are going to be talking about all that and more. So we'll be back here right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. We're actually going to go to one of Alex's reviews right now, and when we come back, we will talk about the loss of a legend in the entertainment industry. I've been Mike the Birdman. He's been Alex the producer. We'll be back right after this.
No one will ever love you more than I do.
Can a man step away from his past into a future free from fear? Or must the dead past return, making of every living moment a time tortured, tormented? Tormented, holding you spellbound for the she-ghost of Haunted Island. Their dreams of desire overshadowed by nightmares. Can a dead love's lust destroy a man? Or can a man defy the she-ghost of Haunted Island? It's going to be just as though you never existed. I'm going to marry Meg. But at the wedding rehearsal was one uninvited guest.
I'll never let you marry Meg. You belong to me, Tom. You belong to a ghost. Tom Stewart killed me! Tom Stewart killed me!
This is the second review we've done for our friends over at Filmmasters. They sent over the movie Tormented on Blu-ray. This is either available, depending on when this review comes out, it is either available now or available for pre-order. So I'll make sure I put a link in the description for you to check it out. But first and foremost, what is this movie? It is a vengeful spirit movie. It's horror in quotes, as in it's a thriller / not really scary. This is a movie from 1960 where a man is going to get married to a woman, and without going into too much detail, another previous lover of his shows up and says that he can only be hers, and then things happen and she dies, and then her spirit comes back to be vengeful and torment. Obvious. So, to give you an idea of the quality of the film itself, it's worth a watch. It is. But to give you an idea, there was an MST3K version of the movie released, 30 years ago now. And funnily enough, I'll get into the special features of what's included, but the movie itself has been scanned at 4K from 35mm archival elements. It looks fantastic. It's a black and white feature. There's crisp blacks. Nothing looks crushed. There's plenty of detail. There's film grain in there. It's not overly heavy-handed. There's not like DNR applied to it, or if there is, it's very minimal. I didn't really notice it. There's pretty good transfer, all things considered, that it's not a high-budget movie from one of the major studios out there. It is also included with the original mono audio for it in DTS, master audio, lossless, yada yada, something that doesn't really matter when it comes to films of this vintage, right? Except that it is clear for the dialogue. It doesn't sound hollow or like in a tunnel or anything, so it's a lot easier to listened to than previous video releases would have been in the last 40 years. As far as special features, there is the original theatrical trailer, which has been scanned at 4K. It's completely raw and not been touched up, and they recut the trailer using restored elements to sort of give you a modern look at it. It's nice that they included both. It's just a fun little thing there. It's in its original aspect of 1:8:5:1, so in the matte standard widescreen. It's 74 minutes long, the standard length of what you saw a lot of B movies or double features or drive-in movies in. It's completely region-free, so you can play this in any region in the world. It'll play in any player, no problems. There is English subtitles for the deaf and hearing impaired. There is a fallback audio of the DTS down to Dolby AC3 for it. So if you don't have a DTS decoder, which you should, but it's there. Beyond that, for special features, there is a TV pilot episode of Famous Ghost Stories with Vincent Price. It's like, was it like 8 minutes long, 10 minutes long, something in there? So it's whatever they could find out. It's a neat little thing. There's a visual essay by the Flying McKeeste brothers. There is an archival interview with the writer, director, producer Bert I. Gordon. Which is actually pretty insightful. It's worth watching. Ballyhoo Motion Pictures presents Bert I. Gordon in the 1950s and 60s Bigger Than Life, which is a behind-the-scenes featurette and sort of documentary on / biography on the director, which is definitely worth it. And what's probably the coolest thing here is they licensed the copy of Mystery Science Theater 3000's versions of Tormented. It's in its 1:3:3:1 television broadcast ratio, but in full HD. So probably better quality than most of you have ever seen it. If you have, obviously you're going to want to watch the movie first in its restored format, and then you can go back and watch the MST3K. I really like that they included that, because that just adds a little bit more, like chef's kiss to this. There is a DVD available that you can pre-order as well or purchase. I watched, obviously, the Blu-ray. I would recommend the Blu-ray because it's a substantial upgrade visually over pretty much any other version of this film that's ever been released. And you can really see it when you compare it to the MST3K version. It's got really good box art. It's pretty much solidifying my opinion that Filmmasters are becoming, one of my favorite companies out there right now when it comes to boutique releases, because it's also not really expensive. Like, it's $20 US for the DVD or $25 for the Blu-ray. Just go for the Blu-ray. Who doesn't have a Blu-ray player anymore? You know what I mean? And comparatively, you sometimes see these crazy limited releases from companies and they're just way too expensive and they're just not worth it for the videos that they're releasing. This seems to be a good sweet spot for this. If you're a big fan of, horror cinema, or if you're a fan of, like, maybe you saw MST3K's version years and years and years ago, and you're like, you know what, I'd like to get a copy of that movie and then also be able to watch the MST3K version. So that's what you get here. I fully recommend picking up Tormented. I'm happy with it. I'm waiting to see what they have next, because they seem to be picking some pretty interesting releases. It's not just like some other boutique companies are picking bottom of the barrel stuff. These guys are picking some pretty interesting projects, and I'm very interested to see what they have next in store for us.
Darling, you look as if you were ready to kill me.
Now you get this straight. I'm marrying Meg.
And you get this straight, Tom Stewart. No one will ever have you but me. Help me! Please, Tom, help me! Take my hand! Pull me out! Save me, Tom, please! Please save me! Please!
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
This Week in Geek News.
And welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman. He's Alex, the producer. It is time to break down the world of entertainment, tech, science, and whatever else that has happened here on planet Earth in this prime material plane. And unfortunately, somebody who's left the prime material plane to the great cinematic moviescape in the sky is legendary movie producer, director, and personality in the film industry. That is Roger Corman. He was the pioneering independent movie producer and king of B movies who has died at the age of 98. I found this out the other day. I'm just going to add this as a really quick kind of add to this. I actually texted Dave and Enrique the second this happened. I was like, guys, you're in this. Here you go. Because I know Enrique, I think he worked with Corman at some point on something. I'm not 100% sure. I would almost be positive of it.
Corman himself hadn't been like really physically active in making movies since like mid 90s. Like he was still a producer and had his office and everything, right? And would still approve things or look at the print. But like as far as active filmmaking, I don't think he had done really much himself in 25 years, which makes sense because the dude was eligible for retirement when you were like 9.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
like he left the industry in that regard pretty early from what I understand. I mean, this might even be a future loose cannon to pick a Roger Corman movie and have some fun with it. Because I'm looking through his filmography just to see how many of his stuff I've actually seen. I mean, there is the story from Variety, and I could kind of read it. And I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs, and then we're going to talk about this for just a couple of moments here. But legendary B movie king Roger Corman, who directed and produced hundreds of low-budget films and discovered such feature industry stars such as Jack Nicholson, Martin Scorsese, and Robert De Niro, has died. He was 98. Corman died May 9th at his home in Santa Monica, California, surrounded by family members. The family confirmed to Variety. Quote, his films are revolutionary and iconoclastic and captured the spirit of an age. When asked how he would like to be remembered, he said, I was a filmmaker. Just that, the family said in a statement. Corman's empire, which existed in several incarnations, including New World Pictures, Concord/New Horizons, was as active as any major studio, and he boasted always profitable. He specialized in fast-paced, low-budget genre movies such as horror, action, sci-fi, some family fare, and his company had become a work in training ground for a variety of major talent, from actors like Nicholson, De Niro, to directors like Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese. When Corman was awarded an Oscar at the AMPA's first Governor's Award ceremony in November 2009, Ron Howard saluted him for hiring women in key executive and creative jobs. Just give me a sec. My thing's moving here. As well as giving them big roles. And Walter Mosley was quoted as saying, Corman offered one of the few open doors looking beyond age, race, and gender. Corman hailed film as the only true modern art form. He pointed that the need of a cast and crew payments meant constant compromise between art and business. And then I'm just going to read a few more things. Howard also joked that when he directed his first film, Eat My Dust, he complained to Corman about the low budget and sparse extra crowd scene, only to be told, if you do a good job on this film, you will never have to work for me ever again. And then we're going to close this article with Quentin Tarantino toasted him.
That's a pretty good remark. It's like, if you're a shitty director, you'll be forced to work with me. But if you're a good director, you could leave me alone.
And then finally, Quentin Tarantino also toasted him with the movie lovers of planet Earth. Thank you. And that's true. Like, you think about how much influence a guy like Corman has had. I know he's had documentaries made about him. I know there's a very famous one. I remember watching that years ago. I need to go back and rewatch that. And I'm looking at his massive filmography. According to IMDb, as a producer, he produced 493 films. He was a director on 56 and
be honest,
acted in 46.
Out of the 400 of them, if we had to be honest, probably about 300 were mostly in name or just as the money man, and he would see, like, might get a daily,
executive producer sort of thing.
Yeah, might get the dailies, might get the storyboard, might do some conflict resolution, and that was pretty much it. That was his extent. For probably about 100 of them, I would say he had a little more hands-on. Obviously, the ones he directed, he's 100% hands-on. But like, if you look, he basically retired from directing in 1978, and then he didn't come back until 1990 when he did Frankenstein Unbound, and then he retired from directing altogether. So he was out of the industry as a director, completely being hands-on for 34 years. And as far as being hands-on as a producer, because executive producer, we know that usually means they're not really on set. They're just in charge of making sure everything runs smoothly. But as far as producer, when it says like a producer, that's somebody who is on site all the time. Um, he basically did some direct-to-video movies in the '90s, the Carnosaur series, and
That's the
then
only one of his I can clearly say yes I've seen, and maybe the Munchie movies.
I saw Dino Croc, I think, when it hit video in 2004, and then but like again, he was sort of a little hands-on or somewhat hands-on with the Death Race series after Paul W. S. Anderson revived it into a big franchise, because he technically executive produced 2, 3, 4, and 5 of those, but like other than putting his name on it, I don't think he did much. I think with the Paul W. S. Anderson movie in 2008, it was probably more like he met with them and then said, "You're going to give me how much money? Okay, thumbs up." I'm pretty sure his involvement at that point was the same kind of involvement that like John Carpenter has with his remakes, right? I would say looking at movies that he had direct input on before he like retired. I think he retired at like in quotes as far as a hands-on producer / director in 1995, because 2 projects came out. One was what's it called here? Dillinger Capone, which was a Roger Corman produced movie starring Martin Sheen and F. Murray Abraham, and you don't get them in the '90s without being hands-on. You know what I mean?
There was something I remember when it comes to Corman being big like that. I remember the Carnosaur movies because I remember it was Diane Ladd, right?
And the Carnosaur movies, at least the first one, was '93, and he would have still been hands-on with that. Looking at it, that was produced by his company. He wasn't he was he's on the docket, but he wasn't direct. But that was right around that time. I think the last time he had any hands-on anything, he wasn't the director, was '94, was the failed Fantastic Four project, just to make it so that they kept the rights.
Which I've never seen. I know you can find it on YouTube. I've seen tons of stills out of it. And I know there's always the joke online where if you go to a comic book convention, someone will probably have it on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
But looking at it, I would say looking at all the movies that were sporadically from the late '90s onward, they were all like sci-fi movie of the week, Dino Croc, Crocosaurus Rex, Super Spider Monster the Third, all that kind of crap. And then the Death Race movies, obviously, because there was a revival. I would say that movie, the Dillinger Capone, because they had actual Hollywood A-list actors. In '95, I think that's the last time he was hands-on. And then he's just like, all right, I got to do a movie with Hollywood, like big shot people. I'm going to wipe my hands clean.
Like, who is left of that independent filmmaker? You would have, obviously, Corman's gone.
Of the first generation?
Yeah.
Nobody. They're all gone. Anybody that was from the '50s, that was from like when the Hollywood system fell, there's nobody left. Now you have the second generation. Okay, well, I'm not saying there might be some people in the European market that are still around from that, but as far as like Hollywood system people that broke the mold, they're all gone. But the second generation were the people that studied with him. That, like, by studied, I mean, like, they got their first pictures through him. He gave them a chance. Those people, there's still a few of them around. Francis Ford Coppola did his
Lloyd
first
Kaufman.
pictures. Right? I think he did early stuff with him, too, before they started their own company. Then Brian De Palma, I think Scorsese might have released something with him.
Boxcar Bertha or something?
All of the guys that were from what you'd call the first wave of directors to go to film school, like in university and study the art of film from the 60s. That's what you would call the second generation independent directors. They all got their start in the mid to late 60s working for him, and then got their start. So I would say, but not a lot of those people ended up being big producers with their own studios, right? I would say the second generation, so that's the first generation. Second generation is Uncle Lloyd. He's still around. There were a few other studios from that era, from the 70s, that are around, but not many that are still running it. Uncle Lloyd's like 78 or something now anyway. So you've got Troma and sort of keeping the true independence alive. And then the generation after Lloyd, you got Charles Band.
Yep.
And he's still around, and there might be a few others. There's more people producing and still around from the Charles Band era, where guys in their 60s or early 70s that were big in the 80s and 90s with the big VHS boom. You've got those guys still around. I think now that Corman is gone, the only guy from the old era left would be Lloyd Kaufman from the 70s.
I can only imagine what Roger Corman's memorial service will look like. Actually, this year's Oscars should do an entire segment to him.
I wouldn't be surprised if I know that he's not doing quite as much, and there's still stuff about getting certain movies made, and the Toxic Avenger movies coming out, the remake. I suspect, if not on YouTube something, there will be some big speech or some big statement from Lloyd, because
they were friends, I'm pretty sure, weren't they?
Like maybe, I'm not entirely sure, but let's be honest, even Lloyd will say, he did their own thing, they did their own things independently. He would probably be the first person to say that the reason that their industry can exist the way it does as an independent thing is because of Corman. He's the guy that did it. He's the guy that said, "Fuck you, we'll make a movie for $1,000," and that movie will somehow make $1 million in a drive-in.
And that's the thing I liked about the idea of Roger Corman, Lloyd Kaufman, Charles Band.
I just realized there is, not as producers, but there are a couple people of that independent era of the late 60s, early 70s that are still around, that are still working. Not fully working, but in that true independent spirit style. You have, what's his name from Twin Peaks?
Shit. David something?
You have, David Lynch.
Yeah.
And then you also have, but he's sort of he came back in 2017 to do that season 3, but he doesn't really do much of anything else. But I would say
Cronenberg, maybe? Could you put him in there?
Canadian cinema is different. We're completely different industry, right? So I would say there's a couple others out there, but John Waters is probably one of the last guys of that early 70s independent. But again, that's still second generation. So there's a couple of them, and he's still working. He's got a new movie coming out, but there isn't, because dude was 98. There isn't anybody else. There won't be any producers left from the 50s. You're going to have actors from the 50s. You're going to even maybe have some directors that were born in the late 30s, early 40s that are still around, but they're outside of Clint Eastwood. None of them are working, right? So it's basically he was the last guard of the first generation of truly independent Hollywood, where they weren't beholden to the Hollywood studio system, and he was willing to do edgy things and make movies that were exploitation, but also tongue-in-cheek, because while it was exploitation, behind the scenes it was actually written and filmed by women. That sort of stuff.
So Roger Corman, thank you for your service to art. Thank you for your contributions to cinema. Maybe we'll do something later on this year. I would love to see more of his stuff that I just never knew. So maybe we'll do a Corman directed episode of Loose Cannon.
A lot of it's terrible, and not that it should be forgotten, but it is forgettable. You can probably count on both hands how many genuinely good films he had that stood the test of time. And the ones that have generally either had full remakes, like Death Race, or were done by people that not movies he directed, but people he gave a start to, that ended up becoming big famous directors and actors afterwards.
So, continuing on with the nerd news this week, this story comes courtesy of Superhero Hype, and according to Ernie Hudson, Ghostbusters Ernie Hudson reveals Rick Moranis turned down role in Frozen Empire. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire star Ernie Hudson recently shared that his former co-star Rick Moranis turned down an offer to return into the sci-fi comedy franchise. In an interview with Screen Rant, Hudson revealed that Frozen Empire's team was unsuccessful in convincing Moranis to reprise his role role of Louis Tully in the first two Ghostbusters movies. I don't know why. I haven't had a personal conversation. I talked to Ivan Reitman before he transitioned, who I know spent a lot of time trying to convince Rick. I know that the other guys have talked to him, and I'm not sure why. Hudson said he just said no. Hudson continued, I know they offered him more money than they offered me, and if I thought they were going to and if I thought going to his house would make a difference, I'd be there because I'd love to see him again, and not just in Ghostbusters. I think he's an amazing talent. I'd love to see him back there if there was any possible way, Morris retired from acting in 1997 so he could dedicate more time to raising his two children. As a widower, he has not appeared in a live-action movie since 1997's Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, although he signed on to appear in Disney's upcoming movie Shrunk opposite Josh Gad. And then they just kind of talk about more Ghostbusters.
He's openly said in the few interviews he's done that he wants to read the script first, and if it's absolute garbage, he won't do it. And this was kind of an absolute garbage script. As fun as the movie was, it was a garbage script.
Yeah, like there was I like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, but it's not. I like Ghostbusters 2 more than like Frozen Empire.
You can. The time to show up would have been in the last movie for him as a send off,
or put him in the Ghostbusters video game. Because then he could have just done voice, and it would have been the original cast.
But remember, outside of showing up in Goldberg's, the last time we heard about him in the news was when some guy randomly went and punched him in the head because they thought it was funny in the streets of New York.
Yeah,
he might just be disenchanted with fame in general. But doing if he's coming back to do the Disney thing, it's clearly not about money because Sony would have paid him bank to show up. So it's not about the money. It sounds like, if I had to guess, Josh Gad
for his kids,
Josh Gad or grandkids at this point, right? Because his wife passed away. His kids are probably what, like my age, probably
at least, yeah.
Like at least, at the very least, they've got. Well, no, they can't. Yeah, they can't be in their 20s because. Unless they were a baby when she passed, they've got to be like somewhere between 34 and 40. So I would say at this point, if he's showing up, it's, for grandkids in something that he thinks is truly family friendly and not goofy. Or somebody like Josh Gad went and like he was willing to sit with them and talk them into it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what role Louis Tully would have played other than a glorified cameo in Frozen Empire. Now, it would have been nice had they made a mention if Winston had said, "Oh, who does your taxes? Oh, we've been using Louis Tully's corporation since I became so-and-so back in 2000, whatever." It would have been nice as like a throwaway line. I heard Sigourney Weaver didn't want to do anything either, which is fine, but there is an Easter egg revealing that Dana is playing at a concert. If you there's like a subway sign they pass by the library scene, and you can see Dana Barrett, blah blah blah, or Dana Venkman, or whatever it is. Either way, there's that. It would have been nice to have kind of a send off to that character, but at the same time, if it's not necessary, why bother?
Two scenes I would have liked, or two semi ideas that I think could have worked. One would have been like if the kids are watching YouTube or something, and an ad pops up because they saw the old Ghostbusters ad. If one of the sponsors or something, like on an ad, they're like, "Oh, stupid pop-ups on a website," and an ad pops up, and it's that he files taxes for the dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's
really clever. That would be really funny.
He's like, "Oh, we'll do." It's like, "Oh, don't has a loved one passed away, but they didn't, fill out their tax information. I'll help you do your tax forms and get your death certificate." And then they could have had that as an ad, and then at the very end of the credits, you have a little sample, and then it's him it looks like he's interviewing a family, and he's like talking about, "Oh, okay, so you need to do this on your W-2 form, blah blah blah, and do this. Is that all correct?" And then the camera pans, and it's a dead person doing their taxes with them.
That would be really clever. That would be a fun post-credit scene.
Okay, and because of his crazy experiences, he can now communicate with the ghosts where they normally aren't communicative, but because he was possessed. And
that's an entire sub-industry making sure the taxes of the dead are filed properly.
And then they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Well, He goes, everybody has to do their taxes. That's his explanation. It's like they're dead. Just because you're deceased doesn't mean you don't have to file your taxes. You could get in a lot of trouble. And then it turns and it's somebody who's dead, or
Yeah.
or a secondary thing would have been. And if they didn't want to go that goofy, which I think that would have got a laugh out of everybody.
For sure.
Or number two, if he didn't want to do anything that big, at the very end, this movie just sort of abruptly ended. Remember, it was just like
just
over.
Snaps. Yeah.
What if they're going back to normal, they're doing their things, and it's like the ending scene is like not the ending scene with like the milk truck or whatever the hell it was being taken over. What if the scene is like they're all on their way, they're all going out to work, and they're ghost busting, and it's like it's having the feel good thing, and then at the very end of the credits, it has the Ghostbuster, like goofy incidental music they always have, like dun, 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 and it's just an empty fire hall, and maybe Slimer's upstairs making noise or something, and then you just hear like footsteps running, and he's like, "Guys, I'm here to help," and he showed up.
Yes,
he showed up like, and he's got his gear on. He's 2 hours late or 2 days late.
That'd be funny as hell.
He's like, all right, all right,
we're back, guys.
All right, I'm here to help. We got to stop this ice monster, guys, and it's just him, and he's been late for like, he was stuck on the subway or something.
See, you do that scene. He comes in, guys, I'm here, and a Roomba just slowly passes by his feet, and he looks down. He's like, "Oh, I'm late again."
No,
that'd be funny.
And if you did have the ads, showing off that he does taxes or whatever, and he shows up and it's at the facility where, the stupid underground facility that didn't have any security, whatever. Mm-hmm. But, you have like the few different ghosts in the rooms. And he just like, they're in there and he's like, guys. And he just turns, he's like, who do you have as an accountant? And he's talking to the ghosts behind the, the ghosts that are haunting the room or something.
Yeah,
or there was the one that was like bouncing between inanimate objects or whatever.
And he possesses a calculator or something like that.
And he just goes like, he turns to it. He's like, how are you set? Are you guys set for liability insurance? Something like that. And he says that to like, I don't know, the nerdy scientists working there.
Yeah.
But I do think like him showing up late would have been funny. But I do really think that it would have worked if it turns out like he's an accountant and you think he's still got a boring job, but in reality he's like filing taxes and doing things for families that are like, he's not a medium, he's doing it for people that are dead.
Yeah, like again, that would have been brilliant. I mean, it would have been cool to see Rick back in the flight suit or do something funny, but I get why. I mean, hopefully he'll be successful in Shrunk. We'll have to wait and see. I think it was Dr. Wayne Kaczynski, I think was the name of the character.
It's too bad that it's not, it's Disney and it's not Sony, and they're not like the same company that made both those franchises, because then you could have done like, even if he wasn't going to be in the movie, you could have done like a viral ad campaign where it's like, what do you mean he was there the whole time? And then all they do is they take the real footage of the movie and they zoom in and they superimpose him in that he's been shrunk this whole time fighting ghosts with them, but as a tiny size.
That'd be kind of funny, actually.
Like,
yeah, like
I know I'm just thinking of like random flash animation things in my head from like 20 years ago, but it's basically there are ways you could have done it, but I ultimately think he read the script and didn't care for it, because they offered it to him. They wouldn't have given him the offer without him seeing it first.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully, like I said, it'll be successful. If Louis Tully ever comes back to the Ghostbusters franchise, wonderful. If not, there's always comic books, video games, and other capacities to see that character exist.
I don't believe he participated in that Martin Scorsese produced SCTV reunion that they filmed in 2018 that still hasn't aired.
I forgot about that.
It's still not technically gone. There's something weird with rights, and apparently some of the editing hasn't finished, and Scorsese was filming his 2 movies, and he wants to finish it himself. If they finish it, they're going to have to edit more things into it because Flaherty's passed away since they filmed that.
Yep.
Because it went so long. But I feel that one way you could get Rick to come out of retirement would be for perhaps a documentary or for a biopic to have a cameo. If it ever becomes time to do the John Candy story.
Yeah,
And
that'd be good.
while he was not in, like, he's more obviously to Americans associated with the Bob and Doug McKenzie stuff, so he's a little more attuned to like Dave Thomas. But everybody always talked about how much they loved John. I don't know if there's currently a young actor that could play, 40-year-old John and have it be believable. But if they ever find the person to do John's story, and if they're still alive, I could see him appearing as somebody in it, or at least participating if they have a talking head or something.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like, he clearly does not want to work unless, it's for a Disney thing.
Yeah. So this last story, it's going to be kind of 2 in 1, but I'm just going to kind of try and bring it together as best I possibly can. So this one comes courtesy of Bloody Disgusting. Crystal Lake, A24 has not pulled the plug on their Friday the 13th TV series. This was an exclusive, and then they have a bit of a follow-up to the story as well. Can you believe it has now been 15 years since we last saw Jason Voorhees on the screen? In the wake of several years of worth of legal troubles, the Voorhees family was set to return in a new Friday the 13th television series from A24, Peacock, and Brian Fuller, the guy who did Hannibal, titled Crystal Lake. But a report this week has cast doubt on the show happening at all. Jeff Schneider reported in his newsletter, The In Schneider, late last night that A24 has pulled the plug on Crystal Lake series, in which was due to begin filming sometime this year. Schneider writes in last night's exclusive report, it's unclear whether this is a permanent decision or a temporary one, as A24 has no comment. Perhaps Peacock will help the trade shed more light on this problem, which was announced back in 2022. According to Bloody Disgusting sources, A24 has not killed off Crystal Lake at this time. We have confirmed that the show is still happening, but there is indeed some retooling on the project. Behind the scenes, we're digging for more information. Peacock had given the project straight to series order in 2022, with Crystal Lake being described as, quote, an expanded prequel to the original Friday the 13th franchise, featuring both Jason Voorhees and his mother Pamela Voorhees. Original Friday the 13th final girl Adrienne King was even signed on for a recurring role as the planned A24 television series. Brian Fuller was set to serve as a writer, showrunner, executive producer, with Victor Miller, who penned the original classic, producing Mark Todoroff as Rob Barsimian and A24. And then there was another following story similar to this, once again reported by bloodydisgusting.com. We've learned earlier this week that the Hannibal creator Brian Fuller is no longer the showrunner of A24 and Peacock's Friday the 13th TV series Crystal Lake, with A24 choosing to, quote, go in a different direction with the material. What does that mean? It means A24 is still planning on bringing a Friday the 13th series to life, but the overall vision will likely change. Kevin Williamson, the guy who did Scream and Sick, has been on board to write an episode of the Crystal Lake series, and Williamson took to Twitter today to tease some of the original plans. Give me a sec, my thing. Where the hell did this go?
While you do that, I'll just mention this. I have a suspicion about this.
Okay.
I think they did market research and realized that very few people want to see a prequel. They want to see him as the killer.
Yeah, like it's
and I feel that maybe what's been holding it up is the multiple years and decades of rights issues over the director and studio.
Sean S. Cunningham and Victor Miller and all this stuff. Yeah,
that, and then I feel the other part is I think they realized people will just say, "Well, isn't this just derivative of that Hannibal TV show?" Or what was the other one that was like the prequel show, Bates Motel?
Yeah.
Like at that point, like, why? It doesn't have to be Friday the 13th. It's just anybody.
Yeah, because it's kind of funny that
it's an anybody show at that point. I feel like they're wanting to switch it more to be a little more in line with Slasher, that TV show that ran 4 or 5 years, where each season was a different slasher thing, like. Or what was the
American Horror Story, 1984?
What was the one on? Yeah, there was that. Yeah, like I feel like they're just like, maybe it's got to be more like, not like anthology, not like the original Friday anthology show, which I still think could come back, but maybe they just want to make it more like an extended movie where it is him just killing everybody in town. Think like Scream or something. Like,
see, if they wanted to keep the idea of it being a prequel show, that is your pilot. You get 2 episodes because they actually describe it from kind of the guy there I mentioned, Williams. He says, quote, "A gorgeous portrait of a mother unraveling in her grief." That's a great pilot. And then you move the show through the decades. You show how did Jason become this unstoppable force of nature, and you could do it.
A 40-minute episode miniseries would work as a prequel. The show won't have legs if it's just a prequel the whole time for a long form series.
Because like one of the things I've learned by hanging out with Dave and Enrique when they did their Freddy's Nightmare show called Welcome to Primetime, I asked them, like, if you had to do a season 3 of Freddy's Nightmares, what would you do? And they gave me a really cool pitch involving Alice from the Dream Master. And I got to thinking, how could you approach this with the Friday the 13th formula? Because I know you and I talked about on the show last year how there's a Halloween series show called Haddonfield. But how do you make the show not about Michael Myers each and every week? Because that's what people want to see. The Crystal Lake prequel idea, it's got some legs, but you got to do it right. Like, you're right. People want to see the hockey mask. They want to see how he went from this child with disabilities to this hulking monstrosity.
How I see Halloween working is not as a supernatural Freddy, Jason sort of thing. How I see a series like that working is Haddonfield. I never saw it, but my idea would be a 13 episode show, playing into the whole like 13, is an unlucky number or dangerous or whatever, right? 13 episode show, and it's about 13 escaped mental patients from the prison. Each one was a different type of serial killer, killing in different ways with different and the whole episode is the whole series are the cops trying each episode to capture and stop one of the crazed mental patients. And you make like the first episode or last episode is about Michael Myers, and it's not like they don't have superpowers, but they each have a different sadistic,
quirk.
Think like quirk that makes them hard to catch, and they're killing in different ways and killing different people. Some might be overly smart and can like slip in and might even pretend to be part of the search team because they're fucking with you. Some might be childish. Some might be just stoic and creepy, and it works as a miniseries. It doesn't work as a continuing series.
Now, one of the people who was set to work on this show, the director of Cube, Splice, and several episodes of Hannibal, Vincenzo Natali, also took to Twitter this past weekend to give us a taste of what Crystal Lake series we'll never see. They wrote, "I've read the first 2 episodes. Brian Fuller's Crystal Lake was well on its way to becoming another Hannibal level reinvention that was simultaneously beautiful, sad, poetic, funny, and horrifying. I mourn its passing." I don't want another Hannibal show. Hannibal already happened. Now, it's not to say you can't do something clever with the source material.
You know what I mean, though? Derivative, that Bates Motel. There's another one that did the same thing, and it's like, stop making the same show, but with one different character. You know what I mean? Like you can make him great. Then why does it have to have the name of that franchise? It could just be a random show. You don't try to make your property fit into the mold that is popular now.
Yeah, because like to try and resurrect the Friday the 13th brand, it's still incredibly popular. It's profitable. Obviously, we lost the game from Gun Media because its servers, if they haven't shut down, they're all person to person now. And they've talked about the cut content that has happened over the years. There's been talk of getting a show off the ground for a while, like as we just talked about, talk of another movie. I think the Jason IP will survive in some capacity, but you have to do it right because, like, for example, I'm surprised we haven't seen another Nightmare on Elm Street thing other than the Goldbergs. I mean, when Adam Goldberg got Robert to come back in costume, that's great, but we're never going to see that again. We're never going to see another Nightmare on Elm Street thing unless it's a passing of the torch. With Friday the 13th, you can put anybody behind that mask. I mean, people would love to have Kane Hodder back. The last guy who did it,
No.
Derek Mears,
If
did
they
a fine job. But
if they make another one, I swear at this point, the only way they can sell a big budget for it is if it's fucking Dave Bautista, who doesn't
that's
speak,
interesting casting.
who is willing to not speak and just be a big freaking monster. Because he's got the name, he's got the physicality, he's not too old yet. Or like, because you can't put like John Cena. It's got to be a big monster, or if you do want to go with a silent giant monster and then have like some name attaché but not big. Who's that big freaking dude from WWE, the Braun Strowman guy?
Shit! Yeah. Otis or whatever.
No, Braun Strowman, or that was what he went by. Him or no? Actually, instead of him, just get.
What about that other guy from the Wyatt family who's still alive? The redhead guy.
Meh. Okay, no, big. No, just get the mountain from.
Oh, that'd be crazy to see him in the Jason mask.
He doesn't have to talk, but he's like 6'10". He's 6'10", strongest man in the world, and then you just have it's like all right, we need you to like crash through this wall. We're gonna rig the wall. Oh, he already did it. Okay,
cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah,
it's like all right. Now wait a second. Oh no, there might be a problem. They might get arrested because in the moment that they're taking to like stuff the dummies into a sleeping bag, he might already stuff the real people into a sleeping bag and just swing them around and throw them.
But yeah, like this is a franchise that is near and dear to my heart, and I want to see it come back, but it has to be given the right people behind it, the right director, the right vision. As much as like I, for example, and you would probably agree with me, I like stuff that gets very deconstructive. I like looking for subtext. I like looking for meaning where there may not necessarily be meaning. I like to deconstruct my media, right? Like I like to think about the things that don't necessarily exist. Like what was Commander Shepard's thought process when he left Earth, sort of thing. That's the sort of thing that I kind of think about, because that's how I consume media. But if you focus a Crystal Lake series entirely on Pamela Voorhees raising her son, that is an interesting idea. But that is not more than a couple episodes of television. That is not a long sustaining series, because Pamela had set fire to the park or the campground over the years. Some people had died. How does your season 1 end? Jason drowns? And then what?
Because then it just becomes Bates Motel.
Yeah, like the idea is cool, but you're right. It's been done. It's derivative. What new do you have to show me? Show me something cool. Show me something that has impact. Give me the Riz. And I want this to be cool, because like I was watching something today and it really got me thinking. Stephanie Sterling from the Jimquisition was talking about asymmetrical horror games. And they were talking about how we've had Puppet Master and Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Evil Dead, and all these derivatives thereof. And you can really apply this to kind of television as well, as we just kind of discussed. If you're just slapdashing a name and changing out the IP for something formulaic, you lose what made that special.
It's the idea of everything being put into the world of Fortnite engine.
Yeah, like I don't need that. Yeah, like I want my Friday the 13th. If you're going to take a fantastic movie series with an iconic villain and a cool tragic backstory, and if you're going to expand that lore, make it interesting, but you have to give people what they want. Unfortunately, as much as it breaks this to sell me as a creative, you got to please the readers, you got to please the shareholders, you got to please the audience. You can't just do 12 episodes of Pamela Voorhees sitting in a psych ward crying. You have to do something with that. You have to give them.
Or then you'd be Star Trek Discovery. only its cameras spinning at 12 miles per hour all the time, with everybody crying and screaming. But then the Jesus Savior saves everybody. And every well, what's going to be our big season poll this year? Okay, well, we're going to take the word red, and then we're going to add a second word to it, and that's going to be the plot line for the whole season, this season. Well, isn't that what we did the last 4 seasons? Well, yeah, but that's apparently what works.
Like, I want something to make these franchises special. And the best example of turning this ship around, the Chucky series could have been stupid. Now, admittedly, I haven't caught the last 2 seasons. I'm going to have to catch up on those at some point soon.
I tried watching last season and I really hated it, and then this season I gave up.
This season, I'd like to know why he's in the White House, but I hear it gets interesting. So, like, all right, I'm curious. You have me intrigued, but that's something where they took a property that should be kind of stupid. They leaned into it in the right ways because the people love it online, and that's great. That worked, right? But Chucky was a character who talked. Michael Myers doesn't talk, and we don't have Donald Pleasance. So there goes your Dr. Sam Loomis, and I'm pretty sure Jamie Lee Curtis is like, can I please just die this time? And
Jamie Lee Curtis will only come back, I swear to God, if she's like, hey, donate a ton of money to a charity of my choice, and 2, greenlight 2 or 3 movies that I want made on a low budget for me.
Yeah, like, and with Friday the 13th, Pamela Voorhees, interesting character, interesting son, because everybody loves Jason and the hockey mask. But again, how do you make that compelling for 12 episodes or whatever it is? Freddy Krueger, you've got so much possibility with that, but Robert Englund, he's too old for it now, and he probably won't do it ever again unless there's a really smart script and someone figures a way to pass the dream powers on to a new Springwood slasher. That series is probably going to go back into the freezer for quite some time if it ever comes back out.
Problem is, like, I was thinking a great series, but it won't happen, or well, if it does happen, it'll be shit, would be because Warner owns it. But Tales from the Crypt would work because you just need a puppet. You need to have the voice. He's still around. I think he's willing to do it.
John Kazir, yeah.
He's
what
only
the fuck ever happened to the M. Night Shyamalan version of that?
But like,
yeah, exactly, right?
That worked. Like, and I mean, not as a show, but as a movie series for streaming. You could easily. It's just give us a bunch of random good anthology stories, and then just pay the actor to do the opening and closing.
Yeah, like honestly, like a really good example of this, and then we should probably kind of wrap this up, is you look at a show like Shudder's Creep Show. That has some fantastic stuff in there. And occasionally they'll put the budget into something really cool. They did an episode last season where they resurrected George Romero via comic book, and he became a character in the real world because someone had went to his office and they found a bunch of his old comic books, but somehow there was a zombie story in there. It was really interesting. It was actually really well done. They had another episode with, I want to say, Justin Long or someone, where they interacted with Peter Cushing via digital insert technology. Again, really weird, but kind of cool. That's the type of television I want to see. Like, hell, I was even a big fan of the Twilight Zone reboot that happened a couple of years ago.
It was it had the issue of being on a streaming platform that at the time nobody had.
Yeah,
before Paramount is now, it's not at the level of, I think, Max or Disney or whatever, but it is a much more established platform than it was in 2018.
Yeah, like there are great things out there. There are great things you can do with these ideas. Like, hell, I think you could even do something with the Phantasm series, which me and Dave are going to talk about at some point on Loose Cannon this year. It sucks we don't have Angus Scrim, but, there's possibilities.
What I want is for MGM, now that Amazon owns them, clear all your shit. And if you're not going to make the Stargate series, you're not going to greenlight Brad Wright series, have Brad Wright and the team get back together and work on a revival of the 90s version of Outer Limits.
Yeah, that'd be fucking sick. Or Night Gallery or something?
Almost everybody that worked on Outer Limits, not the original show in the 60s, but the 90s show, almost everybody on there were the people that went on after the 5th season to go and produce Stargate out in Vancouver. Like, you could say things like the Highlander series, or I forget what the other series, the early series that was filmed there, or the series that made Vancouver, but it was really the Outer Limits.
The X-Files?
And the X-Files, yeah, but it was the Outer Limits, and when that launched up there, that's what kind of made the franchise, made Vancouver the place to be. And the idea of a sci-fi anthology, and Black Mirror has been around, but I mean, that same aesthetic and feel, you can do that now in Vancouver. and that needs to come back. There's been a lot of horror anthologies coming back, but not a lot of sci-fi. The last time I can think of a sci-fi one, and I don't mean like low budget, was it like Code 404 or something? And there was another one or two that were, really low budget on the Sci-Fi Channel. That we're talking medium to high, like as cheesy as it looks, that was considered a high budget show for cable back then. A medium to high budget. The last time was like 2007. You remember when Masters of Science Fiction came out for like 6 episodes? It was really good, and then it got canceled because Masters of Horror was canceled. Masters of Science Fiction, that DVD is like $6 if you want to find it anywhere. But it's literally been 15 years since anybody tried a good sci-fi anthology series.
Yeah, like it's like you can do it, and there is great sci-fi television out there. Like hell, we recently we're going to be talking about this. We're going to record the episode tomorrow, Fallout. That's a show that could lend itself really easy to anthology too. If they ever needed to kill a season, like okay, we can't get Walter Goggins for a season. Let's do Fallout as anthology.
If they have 40 minutes, if they just were like, hey, screw it. To tie over the fans from the next 2 years or however long it's going to take to film a bigger budget one, they could just go, all right, we're doing a 5-episode miniseries of half-hour episodes that we're going to put out over the course of a summer and, break up the year or two in between. You can do that with a show like that, and then just each
or Star Trek, real easy too. Short treks, just expand those out again.
They gave up on that.
Which really sucks is I thought they were really clever.
There were 2 or 3 of the short treks that were better than the actual show. Like legitimately, like for real. It was like, whoa, it's better than the show.
What was the one that was really good? The one that I really enjoyed.
I think
Harry Mudd.
Harry Mudd was fine. I think the one that you're probably going to cite, and most people will cite, is the one where the person falls in love with the AI of the ship.
Yeah.
Where the and it was worked in from the show, yada yada yada, blah blah. Basically, ship stuck in a temporal vortex. Somebody escapes from something. It's been hundreds of years. They get stuck in the temporal vortex. It's been there for, stuck outside of time for, as everything around it ages. It's stuck in there for like, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of years, to the point where the ship's computer and artificial intelligence slowly, heuristically grew on itself and became sentient.
Mm-hmm.
The person that stows away on the ship is going to age and eventually die, falls in love with the ship's AI, who then takes its own appearance from classic films that it found in its database, and they have like a dance together, and they have a full romance, and then the ship has to let him go, because if he doesn't go, he's going to die.
Yeah. Like, that's clever stuff you can do. So if you take the material and you write it with respect and you want to expand it out, it absolutely can be done. So hopefully we'll see something cool come of this project with the Friday the 13th. I know we got a little bit off topic there, but those are some ideas that we literally just spitballed, and we are not super professional creatives. Like even me, like here's my one paycheck. But
because I think whatever they come up with is going to suck, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I have my concerns, we shall say. So we're going to take a break here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. And when we return, we're going to come back with the Weird News Network, but we're going to take a trip to the lands of Galarian. We're going to take a look at the Pathfinder 2nd Edition books for the Pathfinder Refresh. These are the player core and the GM core, and my impressions of it, and some of the discussions I've had with some of the community who are currently running these games in their own worlds of adventure. So we will be right back right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman. He's been Alice Producer. We'll be back, guys, right after this. Hey, guys, this is Mike the Birdman here. I'm here to talk about something really cool we got from our friends over at Paizo. I'm going to be talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the player core and the GM core. These books were recently released as sort of a refresh of the rules for the Pathfinder 2nd Edition role-playing game. But I do have to put a bit of a disclaimer here first. I have not had a chance to play under these refreshed rules, nor have I had a chance to Dungeon Master under these just yet, just because, well, trying to wrangle people in a hurry is a bit of a trick, and it just hasn't happened. However, that being said, I have talked with a number of game masters that I know personally that are running this. I've talked with a very close friend of mine who has run Pathfinder, and I've gotten her thoughts on it as well as plus my initial impressions of this. But I have played Pathfinder for a number of years. I used to be a very big Pathfinder First Edition player. I used to run this back when I lived in my old hometown of Shelburne. And I actually have quite the collection of First Edition books. And I used to call it D&D 3.75 because it worked. And it was crunchy. It was great. I loved the world lore. And it was something different than your typical Forgotten Realms, Eberron sort of thing you would get with Dungeons and Dragons 3rd and now 5th edition with Forgotten Realms. The big thing that Pathfinder does differently is it changes how the action economy is, so where basically you can do 3 things per turn, but it's very, very, very consistent. You'll learn acronyms like MAP, the multi-attack penalty. You'll understand how your power scales, but you never feel weak. You've got a lot more hit points than you do in, say, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. You feel more mechanically powerful. The thing that separates Pathfinder from D&D is there's a lot more math to it, but don't let that scare you. It's a lot more crunchy, which means you can do a lot more things optimally, but you really have to get into the nitty-gritty of this. And this is something where preparation is going to be better over improvisation, which is, I think, the advantage of Dungeons & Dragons comparative. But fights feel, in my opinion, probably more rewarding in Pathfinder because those encounters mathematically work out. I mean, I'm not saying you need an Excel spreadsheet to figure some of this stuff out, but it certainly wouldn't hurt either. Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I think, does a lot of interesting things right, especially now that things have changed with the rules errata, a lot of the old stuff that has been taken out from what I understand under the open game license, and it feels very much this is Paizo's baby, and it feels good. Like I said, at a glance and from everything that I've heard from people that I've talked to, and it's a different type of role-playing game experience. I find Pathfinder DMs do a lot more in sense of preparation in terms of what they bring to different types of encounters, especially now with conditions, but you can also do a lot more, I feel, here that maybe you couldn't necessarily do in D&D, or you could hand wave it away. There are several YouTubers that have talked about this, and I really like some of their thoughts on it, like Puff and Forrest. I'm a big fan of their discussion on this. There's the Rules Lawyer and some of the other various DMs. I think DM's Layer and a few other guys. I like some of their thoughts on this. But my friend Michelle said, yes, there's a bit of a learning curve to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but once you get it down, it actually functions really, really, really well. And I did play one Pathfinder 2nd Edition game with her and her friends a while back, and I liked what I played. It just took me a while because I'm still very much ingrained in that D&D 5 ed sort of mindset. But if you want something more mechanically crunchy, I think you could do something really fantastic with Pathfinder 2nd Edition core and the GM core. And again, I like the world of Golarion a little bit more than D&D's Forgotten Realms setting, only in the regards that you're not bound to 40 years of lore or whatever it is if you want to play very strictly by the book, quote-unquote, in canon. Whereas Pathfinder and Golarion, yeah, it's a really cool world. Yes, it's been around since, like, the mid-2000s or whatever, but I find Pathfinder is a lot more homebrew friendly in some senses. Like, the monsters feel consistent, the ancestries, which is what we're now calling races instead. I like the fact that, you know, hey, if you want to play a goblin, cool, we're in. Character classes, there's not as many as D&D, but literally with D&D you have like 10,000 options, I feel, and it's almost a little much, and then it becomes min-max the game. And here, your decisions matter. Like, mechanically, you really got to think about what you do, and it is possible to build someone who sucks, and you could easily get creamed, but if you pick smart, you could do some really cool stuff. And I can only imagine how much playtesting went to make this system work. So what I'm going to recommend as my review for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it is mechanically very crunchy, which I think is going to work for some players. Yes, there's a bit of a learning curve, but there are tons of videos on YouTube that will walk you through it. The book does explain it fairly well. And one of the cool things about Pathfinder is if you can find their Pathfinder Society, which is like their playing thing. I'm pretty sure that's still a thing. Or you can join a Pathfinder game in your town, city, or wherever, or even online through like services like Start Playing. I could see this being really rewarding. And I love what Paizo does. I love how well supported their stuff is. I've always found them to be very open to questions, and there's always experts out there who happen to know everything. Like, literally, the Pathfinder Society exists, and they will help you. So, can I recommend Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Player Core, and GM Core? Yeah, because if you want something more mechanically crunchy that rewards preparation, that rewards smart play, that rewards you thinking more, overlooking the battle map, so to speak, as opposed to being in that moment and improving and hand waving stuff away. But if that's your DM style, that's fine too. I think Paizo's done something really special here. And again, I would love to play this game at a convention. I could see this being a lot of fun. And I actually do talk about trying new games at conventions in my new role-playing show on Botched Roll. So yeah, I'm going to give this a pretty solid recommendation, but just make sure you do your kind of homework first, because this is a bit of a jump if you're coming at this from the original Pathfinder, which I was, because this was like a bit of a system shock to me. But yet, you know what, man? This is how we grow. This is how you learn to become a better role player, to try new games. Not everything's gonna fit like the shoes you had when you were 10, and sometimes you want to try something new and awesome. And I think going out to the worlds of Golarion is totally worth it. So please check out Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Player Core and GM Core from Paizo, and that is our review from us here at ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
Welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman. He's Alex, producer. It is time to trip the rift and go down the weirdest rabbit holes we could find around the internet this past week. This is the weird news, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net. We're going to start our weird news with coverage from our friends over at Ghostbusters News. And this one, Ghostbusters fans gets themed Ecto-Kia stolen, and it was stripped of its decor. Earlier this week, the police, not the Ghostbusters, were called after prop maker Erica Nisi reported that her customized Ecto-Kia had been stolen, and while since found, the vehicle isn't in the best of shape. The theft occurred at Nisi's Silver Lake, California apartment as someone broke into the garage. Bypassing a locked gate, not only was the Ecto-Kia taken, but several neighboring vehicles were also broken into. As coverage of the crime began to spread, including picked up by the New York Post and Fox 11, Nisi received somewhat good news. The hard-to-miss lime green Soul had been recovered, abandoned. The gadget-heavy roof rack, including a scrolling light bar, animated replica head of Slimer, was stripped, while most of the exterior stickers had been scratched off, with the vehicle showing excessive damage throughout. Acquiring her painting and detailing skills from her father's auto body shop, Nice would conceive the notion of transferring her lime green Kia to an Ectomobile during the COVID-19 pandemic, saying, quote, "During the pandemic, I obviously couldn't make any props for film or television, so I said, well, my cars are green, what can I turn that into? So I thought of Ghostbuster Slimer." Nisi, whose credit included a prop maker, including such films such as Rebel Moon, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Dune, would admit she's financially unable to bring the Kia back to its former glory, citing last year's Hollywood strike compounded with medical bills stemming from various surgeries. Luckily, the Ghostbusters fan community is there to answer the call, as a GoFundMe has been launched in hopes of helping Erica restore the car. If you'd like to aid in the return of the Ecto Kia, click here. Me and Alex will put a link into the show notes. Well, no description of the suspect has been given. The theft of Kia-made vehicles has risen in recent years due to specific models lacking a key anti-theft immobilizer system. If we receive an update, we will be sure to report. Blah blah blah. You get the idea. I'm actually going to check how much money has been raised on the GoFundMe.
If it's all been raised, I'm not putting the link.
Actually, it went over. We don't have to.
Okay, we don't have to. Not that I don't want to. Just there's no point if it's already above what was recuperated.
Yeah, it's cool. So she was only asking $3,000. She received, as of this recording, she received $4,750 from 86 people.
Okay, even after they take their cut, that's above what she's going to need to replace it.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I love it when fan communities, when they're not toxic, because Ghostbusters After Frozen Empire was walking into mood slime where someone's lost game 7 of the fucking playoffs. It was not nice. I'm glad to see them come together to do something like this. So I'm glad Erica's going to have the Ecto Kia hopefully back on the road. Convention season is hotly coming up real soon.
Mood slime. Yep. The name of your porno.
Oh dear. So yeah, that is, like I said, that
a Ghostbusters parody. What's it called? Mood slime. No thanks. I don't need to see that.
You know what the funny thing is, though? It seems like, obviously, if you're stealing a car, but to vandalize it like that seems a little bit above and beyond.
You were angry with them in particular.
Yeah, so I hope this wasn't targeted. Again, that is pure speculation. But car theft is a real issue. I know around here, we have people stealing catalytic converters or stealing like precious metals out of your car, which I didn't even know was a thing. Up until recently,
it's become a thing for people to certain groups of people are stealing cars to then ship to Saudi Arabia.
I know
it was all over
or
the
like to China or something.
No, it's specifically Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and what's the other one? Saudi Arabia and Dubai. It was on the national and a bunch of investigations that the RCMP was involved. It's entire theft rings that steal American vehicles and send them over there because they're willing to pay like 10 times the market price.
Wow, well, when they say crime doesn't pay, clearly they're not talking to the right criminals. If I've learned anything from Grand Theft Auto, I guess. Again, tragic, but I'm glad this story has a happy ending. So, Erica, hopefully you're able to get this fixed up, and we look forward to seeing the Ecto Kia back on the road. So these last two stories...
Watch in like 2 weeks, where they're going to be another ad. It was done again. If it happens again, then it's targeted.
Yeah, which I hope no one's doing that. So these last two stories are gathered by Alex, and I can always count on them to be a little bit strange, as I often do. So this one comes from 6abc.com. Woman found living in family fair sign above a Michigan supermarket. According to police, there was a mini desk, a flooring, a pantry of food, and a houseplant in a makeshift residence. This comes from Midland, Michigan. A 34-year-old woman was found living in the family fair roof sign in Midland, Michigan last month. On April 23rd, contractors discovered an extension cord on the roof of the building and were able to trace it to an enclosed area inside the sign. According to the Midland Police Department, there was a small desk, a pantry of food, a houseplant in the makeshift residence. Police were notified of the woman living in the sign. She was told she would need to find somewhere else to live. She was trespassing on the business, but no criminal charges were filed. Authorities offered to help connect the woman with housing assistance, but she declined. The Midland Police Department was not sure where the woman was staying this week. The woman does have a job, but not at family fairs. They at the store said they would work with her to get her furniture, but there's no word if they're still working on getting her the furniture down, as reported by WJRT reported.
Yeah, this is a funny story, and we should preface it by saying we are not making fun of the people that are
unhoused.
Unhoused or what's the term for
housing insecure?
Housing insecurity. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's in this case, it's the audacity to think that it's not just that you were sleeping. If you needed shelter, you're going to. It's sad stories. This was somebody who was setting up shop.
I think for me, the thing that makes this funny, it's the fact that you're living. It would be like living inside the Walmart sign.
It would be warm.
You know what I mean?
You would burn to death in the summertime.
Yeah, I'd be very concerned about her
Michigan
safety.
in the summer is the same as here. That's like
Sweaty and
110.
gross.
It's like 110 degrees when you're in the sun, and you're in between two metal things that light up and they're powered.
Yeah, like now I'm hoping this woman was able to connect with like housing services.
Well,
Now
it sounds like she doesn't want help.
And that can be troubling because I deal with housing insecurity here in Guelph. I do a lot of work with the poverty task force here. And it's a problem that a lot of municipalities obviously have to learn how to deal with, whether they be large or small. I mean, the homeless problem is a problem that, because literally you are one paycheck away from bad shit happening.
I think, and a lot of times the mistake is, and without, we're trying to keep it light and funny, but the mistake can be people calling it a homeless problem. It's not a homeless problem. In the most cases, it's a mental health problem.
Yeah.
It's people that are of sound mind, want help, seek help, and will get help. And we'll get, like, there is housing available. There is even when there's a shortage of beds, if you are willing, able, not having major substance abuse issues or major significant mental health issues, there's always going to be a church, a mosque, a temple, a local charity, a local thing that will find a bed for you to help you get on your feet.
The problem with that being sometimes there's capacity issues, and this could be a problem where this woman lives. Maybe the capacity just doesn't exist.
You read in the story, the police reached out and said they found a bed and she refused the service.
Maybe it's not safe though. If she's a woman, that's a very big concern.
Not safe, but then living up like 30 feet in a
True. You know what I mean? Then again, yeah, like I would approach this because maybe the woman had a bad experience with the housing system, and that does happen quite a bit.
Then what they need to do is, if they need to reach out to, like, I don't know, the YWCA or something, like a women's shelter
or victim services or something like that.
Because I severely doubt that in the States they have the men and the women in the same shelter. It's just not
that's something I really don't know how their housing crisis is being addressed.
Usually it's women and children in one shelter, men in another, not just for anything that could be assault wise. It can just be, again, a safety factor. Generally, you separate the men and women. And if you're afraid of the other women, then you know what? There's the tough love aspect of, you don't have to go to the shelter, but you can't stay here, is basically what they told.
Yeah, basically, as long as she's safe, as long as she's doing whatever she can to find housing, and I hope she does.
I mean, you've got to be somewhat of sound mind that you brought furniture up there somehow, set up power, and were living in there like a studio apartment. And can I make one joke that's not at her expense? I'll make one joke here, and the joke is, I'll bet you that same space would cost $4,000 in Manhattan. So,
yeah, let's say housing insecurity when it comes to affordability, huge problem. I could talk about this for an hour, but it is pretty funny.
When my brother had his internship down there, it was like a room the size of my living room that was both, maybe not even the size of my living room, that was both kitchen, bedroom, everything, and then he had a toilet inside of a closet and like a stand-up shower right next to it that he was lucky to have, and that was like 6,000 Canadian, 4,000 American, and I was like, what? And so I'm thinking, in those situations, maybe finding space within a sign and just having to swap out between is not as bad of a deal, because they said she wasn't working there. They didn't say if she was actually working though, because that's a situation we're having now more and more, where people are working but still aren't making enough to have an actual place.
Yeah, that's something I have heard, and that does kind of get mentioned in the story. She does have a job, but she just can't afford it. And like I said, there's a whole layer of tragedy here and the system being broken. But we're going to keep this light and kind of levity.
We're not making fun of it. It's just, could you imagine? You're like, hey, there's something. I got to go change that sign, and there's like a whole apartment. That's like being John Malkovich, going into an elevator and getting off on the floor in between, and you find out a whole other world.
You're like, okay, I didn't know this was here, but sure.
It's like
Yeah, it's weird.
Lion went to the wardrobe. You open the wardrobe and there's a whole other world. It's like, hey, that digital Wendy's sign or whatever. Oh, there happens to be somebody. Maybe that's where maybe that's where Rick Moranis has been hiding as an accountant.
There you go. All right, so this last story Alex found us coming to from Euronews.com. Dublin and Ireland are now linked by a, quote, portal, and locals are using it to flirt with strangers. The futuristic installation features a 24/7 live stream between two destinations, allowing real-time interaction between Dubliners, New Yorkers, and visitors. Want to see what people in New York are up to without taking a flight over there? People on the streets of Dublin have peering into the lives of New Yorkers thanks to a new, quote, portal. The futuristic installation shows around-the-clock live stream of the two iconic cities, and there are plans to link up other cities there as well. Intended to mark Dublin as the European City of Smart Tourism 2024, city dwellers have been using the connection for, well, other purposes. Why have Dublin, New York set up a portal? Well, quote, we are delighted to connect Dublin with New York, in which we have a deep historical and cultural bond with, says Lord Mayor of Dublin. I can't even begin to pronounce this name. After the portal launched to a...
I got the story when I saw the name, and I went, Michael has to say that.
Maybe Daffy DeRosti, maybe? After the portal launched to a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people in Dublin on Wednesday. Quote, from July, the Dublin portal will also connect to other global city destinations such as in Poland, Brazil, and Lithuania. The main idea behind the portal is connection. It was given the green light in Dublin as part of the city's recent designation of the City of Smart Tourism in 2024. Quote, portals are an invitation to meet people above border and differences and to experience our world as it really is, united, as one said, Bernatakis Glyphis, a Lithuanian artist who invented the portal. Chatting up locals through the portal. The portal has proved popular with Dublin locals, with crowds gathering to check out what's happening across the ocean. There have been some interesting encounters in the 24 hours since it was launched. In one clip shared on social media, a Dubliner can be seen trying to communicate with his phone to a special someone on the other side in New York. Another portal doing the rounds showed a girl in New York calling a guy in Dublin after connecting through the portal. A video was also circulating of police physically removing someone who was standing in front of the portal. In a more heartwarming scene, an Irish university shared a picture of one of its American students linking up with someone with their mom in New York through the portal. Quote, and then this is the final part of the article. In a statement to Euronews Travel, the team behind the portal responded to these scenes as, quote, we are overwhelmed by the reactions, which are vastly positive. We are not trying to suggest any particular way how people should interact with the portals with each other. It continued, instead, portals are an invitation to meet fellow human beings and for people to draw upon our own interpretations and feelings. In this sense, we are also just observers of the event. It is great to see the amount of creative energy that people have and how powerful human connection can be. And then where to see the portal. Running until autumn, visitors and locals can find the portal on Dublin's O'Connell Street, where the iconic GPO building and the spire as the backdrop. In New York City, you can go to Flatiron South Public Plaza on Broadway, 5th Avenue, and 22nd Street, next to the famed Flatiron building. And then there's going to be more portals put around the world. That's really cool and a really good use of tech.
You know what? I'll say a couple things here. One, this is a great way for, especially since it's fairly inexpensive. They're basically just running it off the city's Wi-Fi or a direct connection to the city's, which costs like nothing. And the only liabilities you have are like, is somebody going to defecate on it or do something gross? And that's why you have to have some police monitoring it. But for the most part, it looks like, because this is an audio podcast, it looks like almost like a crystal ball plugged into like a sci-fi sort of stand that you look into. It's like a rounded curved screen, almost like a speaker's corner type thing.
Yeah.
But this could be used for, you know how every city, I don't know if it's like that everywhere, but every city in Ontario has a sister city in the States, and sometimes a sister city in Germany and other countries, where the consulates will pick out a city. And we used to do that for pen pals back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And a student in like grade 3 or 4 would get a student in another city that was considered the sister city, and you would write letters back and forth to say what your life is like. Well, you could do that. You could have I'd have to look up what Guelph's and what Kitchener's sister city is in the States or abroad, but you could have those installations put in, and then you get to peer into what the downtown or whatever life is of your sister city somewhere across the world. And yes, you could use your phone or watch like a live stream of something, but the idea that it's a passive thing that just becomes a part of the art installation of the city, you really get to see people acting naturally, which is different than, having to manually sit down and click on a thing to watch a video. So I could see that being kind of cool as a way of drumming up tourism between two cities in different countries. The other thing I was thinking is you were saying that they're not telling you how to do anything, but they want to see what the interactions are. I'll tell you right now what has to happen before the end of the summer, and to be like the most New York thing possible, is somebody's got to set up a table on both sides, and you got to have random people coming and playing chess against each other.
Oh, that'd be kind of cool, actually.
You know what I mean? Like you got and you got to have it like, you sit down, you set up the boards, you look through the portal at each other, they make their move, you move their piece on your end, you move your piece, they move your piece on their end, and not talking to each other, not having your phone out. You're literally playing an online, in-person online game of chess. Because like when you think of
people could share Switch codes like this. People could play Pokemon Go like that. That's really clever.
People think of like New York City. You think, basketball courts, and you think of Central Park with the dogs and everything. When I think of New York, one of the iconic things is seeing old people, young people, all different backgrounds, sitting down at those tables in the parks and playing chess. We have a couple of them downtown Kitchener. Toronto has them, major cities, but New York is the city you know of in North America where they do that. That happens obviously in a lot of European cities. They play chess or play other games. But New York, what is the classic thing? Whenever they do like a video of New York or a movie, and they're doing like a montage, like a CSI type thing, and they're moving around, there's always a bunch of old dudes playing chess in the middle of the park.
Yeah,
and
every single time.
Set up one of those tables where the table itself is that, and you could totally do that. And then you would have people gathering on both sides to watch the people play. Even though the novelty is you can play chess online now, 2 seconds on your phone, but the idea of you're technically playing in person.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see actually happen.
That's a great photo op. So that story that just came to my head, and I was like, that's what you got to do to get the New York experience. And then during, it's too bad it's happening now and it's not happening like next year, because think about how great like St. Patrick's Day would be, celebrations of people both sides.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So yeah, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of The Weird News right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. And we're going to listen to one final review from Alex this week, and then we're going to come back and tease some of the programming that will be coming up on the site this week. So we'll be back, guys, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman. He's been Alex the producer. We'll be back, guys, right after this.
Somebody once said that you can tell about a man from his books. But I wonder about that. I don't believe it's any more true than you can tell a book from its cover.
But Colonel March, sir, he didn't run away. Not Mopsy.
Personally, I've always been able to tell more about a man from what he ate, or what he didn't eat.
I've got to get out of this house. I shall go daft if I don't.
Right.
I'm afraid said too bad about... Hands off me. What is this, Marshal? They can't prove anything.
Can't
they? Well, it's been a little bit since we did a review from our friends over at Film Chest, but they have sent over Colonel March of Scotland Yard, which is a TV show from... what was it, 1954, 55? Let me pull up my trusty box here to double check. Yes, that's right, with 26 episodes spread across those 2 years. Now, this is a series that is kind of a precursor to a lot of the mystery shows, as well as even some like supernatural stuff. Dare I say X-Files-ish? Kolchak the Night Stalker-ish. Not exactly, but there's a little bit of a supernatural tinge to this. Starring Boris Karloff. Love Boris Karloff. Love all of his movies, love every appearance he was in. The dude just had class, and you generally knew that even if it wasn't always the best production, he was going to be good in it. He was one of those kind of actors. Now, what this is this is considered one of those, I guess the industry term was locked room mysteries. The idea being that it was a crime that was committed that nobody would seemingly be able to figure out, but you brought in some expert, and through their indelible actions and deductions and, almost uncanny ability to solve crimes, they would solve it, and you'd figure out the whodunit at the end. Something that became very standard in the 60s and 70s, but was still, in the infancy of television early in the 50s, was still pretty new to it. I'll say this before moving forward. There's been a pretty decent restoration. I mean, it's not like crazy, we're not talking Star Trek levels of restoration here, but it looks like it's been cleaned up from the original source materials, and significantly more so than what you would have seen in a lot of, 5th or 6th or 10th generation dubbings. As far as the audio is concerned, it's a little rough. It's a little bit on the tinny side or hissy side. I've seen some movie serials from 20 years earlier that have cleaner audio, so it's just sort of, it's a relic of the era, of the television era. TV was not considered, something to be archived or even recorded properly. We're in the early 50s. We're entering a time where not many shows were actually, recorded to tape afterwards. They were still using kinescopes for a lot of this stuff back then, or, maybe they were filmed on or transferred to 16 millimeter for overseas. And, I don't know all the details on the productions of this, but this appears to be of middling quality of the era. The upper end stuff being the stuff that was filmed either on 35 millimeter by the start. This is not like an I Love Lucy where they went all out and were like the first show filmed on film. And this is also not in the same league as the quality of like the Honeymooners. But it's a step above a lot of other stuff from the first half of the 1950s. And especially visually, it's a step up from a lot of the stuff from that era. Now, the episodes come with a little booklet on the inside that has episode synopsis for each one, as well as it's episode synopses as well as little trivias for each thing. I did notice, maybe it's just my discs, I don't know, but when I was watching episodes, they didn't 100% line up. It might have just been because I was watching it in my DVD player in my computer, so I don't know if my player on my computer was pulling the wrong things, but when I selected like episode 1, for instance, what is episode 1 in the booklet wasn't episode 1 on the disc. It ended up being what was it? Episode, I don't know. Was it episode 6 or 8 or something? Looking at it right here. It was, episode 8 was episode 1. But then again, I'm looking at the booklet here. The booklet has them. Oh. The booklet has, it might just be at the booklets because I see episodes 1, 2, 3, and then episodes 16, 17, 18, 19, then episode 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm not sure if it's a matter of they're printing them in the broadcast order versus the recorded order. You know how some of that stuff gets. It doesn't really matter. It's not like any of these are going to connect together at all. They're just one-offs. But like episode titles, just to give you an idea of what you got. The Sorcerer, The Abominable Snowman, present tense. Silver Curtain. Let's go to see if there's another more sensational one. I ended up watching 2 episodes per disc to get a feel for the show, and I'll probably end up watching more, but I wanted to make sure I got a review out in a timely manner. I'll probably end up watching all of it. Probably multiple times because it's the kind of show I like. But there is Murder is Permanent, The Talking Head. There is also The Invisible Knife, The Missing Link, Deadly Gift, The New Invisible Man, and the final episode listed is Passage in Arms. And that was, interestingly, have pretty varied in plots. Boris Karloff puts in a stellar performance. Now, as I said, there are little trivia bits for under each episode. Some relevant to the episode themselves. Some just trivia of productions or the actors involved of the time. So it's nice that they have little snippets of that. I like when shows do that, or when companies put those on those releases. It is in mono, as is expected. And as I said, the weakest part of this release is the audio, but there's not much you can do. You got to deal with what you have. Everything is put onto 3 discs. They're all dual layer. From what I can see, reading it in the computer, it's pretty much maxing out the storage space on the discs. These are half-hour episodes, so we don't have to worry about putting too many episodes per disc. 2 of the discs have 9 episodes, and one of the discs has 8, I believe, on it. 9, 18... yeah, that adds up. That's my simple math on it. I've had a pretty good time with it. It's reasonably priced. It comes in a cardboard slip cover to protect, I guess, against dust, but also looks a little nice on the shelf. Similar to the packaging that we saw on the Mike Hammer Private Eye release and was it the Invisible Man release that we reviewed earlier, I guess the end of last year, early this year. And I'm happy to see that this is something that, as far as I know, had not been released in its entirety, at least not scanned and remastered in recent era on DVD. So I'm happy to see that Film Chest did this. I hope that they have more like this coming soon. It looks like they're off to a pretty good start with what they had coming out at the end of 2023 and early 2024. So we'll keep you updated if we get more in for review. I'll put a link to purchase it. I'll see if I can get a link for their website for you in the States, and for those of us in Canada, I'll see if I see a listing on Amazon or something to that extent. If not, I will put an international link from Bluray.com or DVD.com, because they tend to have links for everything, including standard def DVD releases on there. Worth it if you're a fan of Boris Karloff. Also worth it if you're a fan of classic television. Maybe it's something you can pick up and watch with your mom or your dad or your grandma or grandpa, or you just want to have it on your shelf as something that is of the somewhat spooky nature, but also it's a hybrid of standard mystery show / whodunit with a bit of not like Scooby-Doo, but a little bit of that whole it's a supernatural thing, but then we're going to solve it and figure out who's behind the mask sort of thing. If what I've said is to your liking, be sure to check out Colonel March of Scotland Yard. Available pretty much everywhere that you can find DVDs from our friends over at Film Chest Media Group.
All right, guys, welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman. He's been Alex the producer. Welcome. Thanks for joining us over this last...
Welcome to Die.
Hi, X-Chickens. So yes, actually, I hope you guys are really watching X-Men 98. And that actually kind of leads me into, or X-Men 97. I wonder if they'll call next season X-Men 98, actually. Whatever. But I was talking with JT. We are planning on recording kind of a summation of our thoughts on X-Men 97. The finale airs this week, so we're going to record something next week so we can rewatch the show in one go.
Without spoiling it, you've watched the most recent episode, right?
Oh yeah. I was like, wow, they actually did it.
I didn't. I won't. It's not spoiling old storylines that I didn't really know about. I won't spoil, but I'll just say this. Don't call for help if your bones are basically yogurt.
Yeah, it's going to be intense to see what happened. And it took them 7 years to undo that in the comics. So I'll be very interested to see how they pull this off. But yeah.
Whatever they did, from what I could tell, it was basically the closing image of the last frame of image of that episode was almost a line-for-line reproduction drawing of the panel in the comic.
Yes, cool. It was. I was like, oh my God. I was so surprised to see that, because I remember as a child growing up, seeing that image fucking shook me for years because it was so intense. Nobody thought to do this. But yeah, so me and JT are going to be talking about that really, really, really soon. I know we were talking about, there's an episode Alex will post, so hopefully that will go up soon. I know Dave and Enrique are currently working on a movie. They're currently filming right now. So I don't know when I'm going to get Dave back on the show.
Babysitter Killer 2 or something?
Babysitter Massacre. I think that's Enrique's baby, and they're filming that on weekends, I think.
A sequel to that one that he had come out a few years back.
Yeah, so that'll be neat to see whenever that comes out. We'll probably have Enrique on the show just to talk, what does it take to make movies? Because the last time I was on a film set was 15 years ago, or actually no longer than that. And I was a terrible sound person. Um, but yeah,
like even I know from small films that it's nerve wracking. My mom's been on too. She's been on a small, short, like 3-minute film that was for a film festival, and that was still like 5 hours of shooting to get 3 minutes of footage.
yeah, like
Um,
it's lighting and setups and camera
and
positioning.
and then she was in a movie called The Demolisher, which we covered on the show. And that one, like again, small independent picture, and it's like if when you have to shoot at nighttime and you're not really getting permission for more than one night of closing a street off because it's so expensive, you have
Mm-hmm.
to get crazy creative, and like it's nerve wracking as shit. And that's when you have like a medium to like a low to medium budget. When you're doing it all yourself, like I can't imagine. Like I don't know how Enrique has hair that he hasn't pulled out yet.
There was a very fast story I'll share. I was in Toronto for an Xbox event. This would have been like really long time ago, but it was when the Incredible Hulk was coming out with Edward Norton, and the only scene was a guy running out of a building. That's it. And I remember sitting there in, I think it was fall when this was being filmed, and I remember sitting there with another Twig personality. We must have sat there for like 3 hours, and it was literally just a guy running out of a building over and over and over again. I guess they were doing like coverage shots and pickup shots and all this stuff, and it was like, holy crap, for literally less than 2 seconds of film. That's nutty. So yeah, we've got some stuff coming up. Obviously, we have Earth versus Soup. There's going to be more loose cannons. I know right now, me and Dave, we're planning on talking about the Phantasm franchise and the Trancers franchise. Me, Aaron, and Alex are, as of this week, we're going to be recording our collective thoughts on the Fallout show. I did my review of it, but I want to hear what these guys think, because we did kind of touch upon something interesting in this show, talking about shows that lend themselves to anthology if you need to tie people kind of over, and we're eating pretty good in the era of the video game adaptation. I know we just had Fallout Knuckles came out a couple weeks ago, which I haven't seen yet.
He says as we're entering the summer when Borderlands looks to be shitting out on us.
I know, and that's feels like such a step backwards.
I feel bad because when I saw the trailer, the newer trailer for it, when I went and saw Fall Guy, my mom turns to me. She's like, "What's this garbage?" and
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, it's based on a video game." And then she goes, "Oh, but I really like Kate Blanchett." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Oh, I'm not going to go see this in theaters. I'll wait till it comes out because she's good in everything, but that looks really bad." And I was like, "Thank you. I feel bad for Kate Blanchett because I don't feel bad for Kevin Hart.
No.
I feel bad for her because she's so much better than the property is."
Yeah, like my guess is it opens in August. My guess is it'll be on streaming and digital to own by second week of September. It will have a very short theatrical window. It will not survive.
The window for it to come out ended after the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie in 2014. If it had come out in 2016, it would have done well. It waited too long.
Yeah, like, because that movie's been gestating forever. But yeah, so we're going to talk about Fallout and some other video game adaptations, because I know The Last of Us season 2 is starting to film pretty soon. And yeah, we've got a lot of cool stuff to look forward to, but it'll be nice to get back with Aaron and Alex to do that. We're also going to probably do some more of our pre-recording stuff for a really cool summer series we've been kind of working on for a while. And then we'll just cover more sci-fi movies. I'm going to get more loose cannons recorded, maybe with the boys. I need to hook up with Ken at some point to talk about some more anime stuff. And honestly, it's just nice to get back. And as
we're basically 3 weeks away from when we're really going to be amping up all the prototype stuff. The plan was to have more prototype stuff earlier in the year, but there hadn't been much to talk about unless we were just going to be doing entire shows about how shitty
about
the
layoffs
is.
Yeah.
Like the only one that we really could have talked about was all the great RPGs that were happening that I've already promoted and talked about. And then obviously we want to have our Final Fantasy talk at some point this summer. So outside of that, where we're ramping up is we'll be doing what we always do. We're going to be having daily coverage as all the showcases start happening, probably with last week of May is usually when a lot of the Japanese stuff starts, and then rolling through into June. There hasn't been announcements as to what's happening in July or August outside of like opening night live for Gamescom and that. But as it stands now, I've already invited my brother and a friend or two over to go, and we're going to do a live watch of the opening night for Summer Games Fest, which is going to be on the Friday. And then the Sunday is Xbox. No word yet on Nintendo, Sony, or anybody else. EA is probably going to do something, but we'll figure it out. Basically, we'll probably have 6 to 7 episodes of the prototype over the course of a week or two.
Yeah, and then I'll be coming in whenever I get a chance to, and yeah, that'll be fun. And then finally, something that I've been doing kind of in the background is I have submitted a demo to CFRU to bring TWIG back to the air, and it would be very similar to the 1 hour, or in this case, 58-minute, maybe just kind of talking about something that's fun, doing a little bit of news, a little bit of review, something like TWIG used to be back when we were on 90.1 back in the mid 2000s. So don't know what's going to happen with that. The demo literally got submitted at like midnight last night, so I'll let you know whenever that gets approved. But yeah, it's going to be a fun summer at TWIG. This is the most I've been looking forward to something in a while. Like E3 is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to finally talking Final Fantasy because I know Alex is like, I don't want to give you spoilers. I'm looking forward.
I don't want to give you spoilers, but we could spend a weekend just hanging out and talking about every little nook and cranny of that game.
Yeah, like it's fun to get excited for a game. And now that my time is freeing up in other ways, ramping up in others, I've recorded a couple of episodes of Botched Roll. Those will be released in the next little bit leading up to Free RPG Day on June 22nd, where I'll be launching my Patreon project that I've talked about for a little while. So keep an eye on my social media for that and my TikTok. And yeah, so for This Week in Geek, we have been
Alex, the producer.
I've been Mike, the Birdman, saying be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.